Hi, everybody. So, I'm here to speak about the approaching new moon in Cancer, which is happening on the 17th of July. And we've had the sun moving through Cancer since the summer solstice on the 21st of June. And here in the UK, it's been a very big portal that opened on that solstice. The lead up to the solstice, the amount of light coming into the planet was absolutely huge. Lots of solar flares upgrading our light bodies. And and of course, what does the light do? It brings up the shadow. So ever since the solstice, it's like we really had to do the work of integrating what it's illuminated, what it's brought up. And given that the sun was in, and still is, the sign of Cancer, which is the mother, the inner mother, regardless of whether we're male or female, and the recent full moon 8 days ago was in Capricorn, the opposite sign, the sign of the father, the inner father. The way that we've been initiated has been around showing us how our story that we took on from our interactions with our mother-father figures growing up in our family of origins story, how we relive those stories, how we project them onto the people around us. So, for instance, my wound with my father was that he didn't see, understand, and value me. And so, I was triggered and I projected this onto a brother. And similarly, that was close to the full moon in Capricorn. And then, in the last week, as the sun was waning, starting her 2-week descent down to the new moon in Cancer, the opposite sign, the sign of the mother, I noticed in myself, a sense of agitation, feeling unsupported. And I noticed in myself I was going into the Martyr, which is, my sort of mother wound story of feeling I wasn't supported, even though my mum tried to do everything possible to support me. She wasn't supported. So, and her own self-care wasn't very good. So she wasn't able to provide the level of support that I really needed. So this also happened, in the situation I was in. And so it's a gift, even though it doesn't feel like it at the time, when these wound stories come up for us, it's an opportunity to go, okay, where am I perpetuating this? Where am I so attached at a subconscious level that I'm looking for evidence that this story is true and reacting to that, in my emotional body. So just if that helps in terms of, this was an awareness that I got. The mother wound, that awareness didn't come until I sat in a womb chamber, a beautiful room built under the earth, before I facilitated a red tent for 20 lovely women in a yurt the other night. So, when I felt really held by the mother, by feeling, this beautiful earthen chamber, this man-made cave, and I think we all need one of those in our backyard, to be perfectly honest, because just like a baby that's not swaddled when it comes out of the safe container of the womb, if we've experienced trauma, and we all have, let's face it, there's nothing more healing than feeling truly held, and so to have a dark room, so to speak, a womb chamber where you're just feeling so held by the earth mother. The two sisters that I went in there with, we started toning, and then we just went into the deepest silent meditation, and we all came out of there feeling reborn. So give that experience to yourself in whatever way you can, whether that's swaddling yourself in a duvet or a doona, or in a dark room, in silence, or maybe in a bath, you know, feeling held by those sort of the waters with candlelight, like being in the amniotic fluid of the womb. Anything that helps us to feel really held on a somatic level. So I will put the link to the exact time of this new moon in the description, so you can see it in your location. We're now in that final week of the lunar month, or the lunation of you know, the last month. And this is a time when we might feel a bit more reclusive, a bit more like we need our space. We need unscheduled being time to just distill the experiences that we've had over the last 3 weeks of this lunar cycle, so that we can reflect. You know, that's certainly the strength of Cancer, the ability to reflect, because it's a water sign. It's the first of the 3 water signs. And if we give ourselves the time and the space to reflect, we, like a pond, become still emotionally, and less, you know, all over the place, you know, emotionally unbalanced. So this transit is likely to highlight our relationship with our family, our community, and the state of our home situation. So, you know, it's likely to highlight for us what we need in our home environment in order to feel comfortable and supported, so that we can really be ourselves. Yeah, we're not having to walk on eggshells or always just hold space for others, but we can really relax and let our guard down and be, you know, spontaneous. So notice perhaps what feels draining for you in your home situation, where you feel unsupported by your community or those closest to you, and what qualities enable you to really feel a deep sense of belonging and support to be able to thrive. You know, for some, this might be a time to realize you've outgrown your community, that maybe you need to relocate. It's often during a Cancer transit that we get a sense of, oh, I need to move, you know, and be like the crab that is the symbol of Cancer, and know that home is a state of being. It's being heart-centered, and that we can carry our home with us if our self-care practices are really strong. Because let's face it, it's harder to have a routine of self-care when we're traveling. So many this month will decide to move house, or even relocate to a geographical location. So this is a time to notice if you're in co-resonance with the energy of your location, whether that space on the grid is actually feeling good for you or not. So Cancer also reminds us to harness the support of our community, to be resourceful in meeting our needs, and also understand that soul connection is absolutely paramount to our emotional well-being. That if our interactions with others are surface level, if we only talk about who won the football or the weather, you know, or if that's the level of conversation that you have with your family when you go home, you're going to feel more isolated, more lonely, more alone. Whereas if you're around people that perhaps aren't blood kin, or you haven't known for years, but you can really share your inner world with them, the people that you feel safe to confide in, more of them, okay? The people that really meet you there, meet your soul. So Cancer, as I said, invokes the inner mother. So this is a time when we're likely to see how good our self-care is. In other words, if you get sick, it's a flag that your self-care needs a little bit of tweaking, all right? Or perhaps you've taken on too much and gone into what is called the dark mother. You know, somebody who is heavily sighing with martyrdom, complaining to anyone that'll listen, something I've noticed in myself this week, and it's been a bitter pill to swallow. So yeah, look at where you need to restructure how you manage your time, which is bringing in the strengths of the opposite sign of Capricorn, so that you can sustain giving to your community or giving to your family. Because if we burn out, and the sign is if you're burning your toast, burning your food, then, you know, you're no good to anyone and you're going to become dependent on others. So this sign really asks us to look at where we're not being personally sustainable and be accountable for that to ourselves, to fiercely commit to ourselves and meeting our own needs. So, you know, this is, if we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not as adaptive to change as we need to be. And Cancer is a mutable sign. It asks us to adapt. So especially now, you know, in these transition times, our plans are dissolving. So we're having to be far more adaptable than we have been in the past. And if we're watery, if we allow ourselves to acknowledge our feelings, okay, so this is our feeling function is the heart. The more we can attune to our feelings, the more we can identify our needs. And if we don't connect with that, we spiral down into our emotions, and that's when we can feel all at sea and emotionally out of balance. So good self-care means that you know, we're not going to get caught up in karma drama, and we're going to prioritize what we need, knowing that, you know, we are the only ones that are responsible for meeting our needs. We can't resent others if we haven't spoken up and acknowledged to ourselves what our needs are. And, you know, if we're not doing that, we can become rigid like stone, which is swinging into the shadow of the opposite sign, Capricorn, and become really cold, unfeeling, detached. Because when a sign is out of balance, it swings to the shadow of the opposite sign. So Capricorn, being one of the outer generational planets, can be really cold and aloof. So this is also a time when we need to have time of being. You know, when we're in the heart, we're not trying to adhere to a schedule. We're giving ourselves time to just be. And when we have that space, we're more likely to feel into what it is we need, to feel into the truth of situations. So Cancer transits can ask us, regardless of when we're born, to slow down so that we can reflect and feel into what we need to do to make heart-centered choices that honor our true feelings. So when we do that, we're less likely to unconsciously project mother onto others, i.e. need other people to process our feelings for us by acting as a sounding board, you know, where we just talk incessantly at people and it's not a reciprocal give and take. And it's also a really good time, if you're not already in a community practice such as a monthly sharing circle, to seek out that, so that you've got ongoing psychological and emotional support, i.e. soul connection once a month support, so that you're held by a safe container to be supported to grow each month by identifying what it is that you've outgrown and shed that skin, so that you can keep growing like the Ouroboros, the serpent that eats its own tail. So this sign also encourages us to attune to our intuition. And in the Labours of Hercules, the lesson of the sun moving through Cancer is the capture of the doe. And I've been lucky enough to see some does since doing 2 men's circles where I shared this myth with the brothers. And yeah, I took that as a really lovely positive sign, because the doe it reflects a state of innocence, receptivity. In other words, if we're humble, then like the empty grail cup, we can receive intuitive insights. And often it's through having a good cleansing cry that we clear our channels so that we can be receptive. You know, if we think we know everything, you know, we can become unteachable, you know, because our mind is already full of what we think we know, so we can't receive gifts of divine gnosis, divine inner knowing from the quantum field of infinite divine wisdom. So pay attention to your intuition, that lovely, gentle wisdom of the heart. It's a softer urging rather than the mind, which is the one that tells us what to do and can be quite demanding. So this new moon that we're approaching on the 17th, the sun and moon will both be opposite Pluto, which archetypally is Hades, lord of the underworld. So this is likely to stir things up from the subconscious, unhealed wounds, from, you know, Pandora's box, and it's squaring Chiron, the planetoid of healing. So you might find that, you know, what I spoke about at the beginning of this video, those old stories that you've constructed as illusions, thinking that they're real, projecting them onto your relationships with men and women, particularly those that you feel closest to, because the more safe we feel with someone, the more likelihood they're going to wear our shadow. So it's really important that we are accountable for that. And when we become aware of, oh God, I've just projected my shadow onto this person, that we acknowledge it. And this is where community practices, sitting in circle, help us to do that, so we can be in right relationship with others and not escalate conflict or perpetuate trauma. So yeah, we might have some of our old family wounds triggered and evoked as we come down to this new moon. And Venus and Mars will be conjunct in Leo and in a tight trine with the North Node. So this sees us boldly moving forwards if we listen to that intuition and follow the call of the heart. So I hope that's helpful. Feel free to share this, and blessings on your week as we come down to the new moon in Cancer. Ciao for now.